Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Dr. Christoph Kimmich, who was appointed by us in the Board of Trustees as the Interim Chancellor of the City University in December of 1997. Dr. Kimmich comes to us with a really outstanding history. He's a graduate of Haverford College near Philadelphia, and he has a PhD from Oxford University. He's a specialist in German diplomatic history and has written many books on the subject and has been also a Fulbright scholar. He came to the City University first in 1993 to Brooklyn College, where he taught history and then became Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost of Brooklyn College, and from there he was appointed to be the Interim Chancellor after Anne Reynolds resigned. Dr. Kimmich, I'm interested in your view of the function of a teacher, because I know that your father was a teacher, as my father was a teacher, and that you have a view, and you felt that at Oxford University especially, that the function of a teacher was a special thing. Tell us about it.
I think what really attracted me to teaching, both as a graduate student and then afterwards as a career, was to reach young people who were interested not only in learning about the world, but in making something of themselves, in providing them with an opportunity to do just that, to inspire them, and in turn to be inspired by them as they began to develop, as they began to hone their skills, develop their minds, gain a larger and very profound understanding of the world as I grew older. So that is a very attractive profession to be in, because it is constantly renewing.
Well, that's what I felt when I went to City College, because I had come here from Puerto Rico. I really had not been exposed to intellectual ideas, and to me, the first year at City College was the most exciting year that I've had, because I suddenly came into contact with wonderful teachers who opened up a whole intellectual vista that I hadn't had before. So I recognize the importance of this. And I'm interested in the fact that you went to Brooklyn College, because at Brooklyn College, the whole idea of a core curriculum has been a basic issue over the years. Tell us about that.
The core curriculum, which the college introduced in 1980, is a mandated 10-course curriculum required of all students, who will be exposed to a whole range of modern knowledge, from the classics through Western history, through non-Western history, to English literature, to philosophy, to computer science, to the natural sciences, to the social sciences, in a broad sweep that is not only coherent, but introduces them essentially to the basic concepts, that gives them opportunities to think for themselves where they might want to go, how this fits into their educational goals, and how they can build on that for the future. The real introduction here is of students going into learning about disciplines and building on that for their future education.
Do you think, or do we have that same discipline at the other colleges in the City University?
We have it at many colleges. A number of them have introduced core curricula, not quite, I think, as rigorous and as mandated as the one at Brooklyn College, but certainly other institutions in the system have core curricula. Some have greater choice than others, but all seek to provide entering students with a basic foundation in general knowledge and basic skills, and in opportunities for further growth.
Do you have that at the community colleges as well?
You have it occasionally. You don't have a great deal of it. Community colleges play a somewhat different role, as you know. And for us, I think the community colleges here in New York City, of which there are 6 in our system, are extraordinarily varied and rich and diverse in what they offer, what they do. Community is their middle name, and they do a wonderful job just in reaching out to their community and to serving students coming from that community.
Well, now you've been interim chancellor for quite a while, and you may be for a while longer, because we're still searching for a permanent chancellor. What do you find to be the biggest problem you've had as chancellor?
I think that the problems that the university faces are essentially three in number. One are the consequences of years of neglect. I think that shows up in the physical plant, in facilities. I think it shows up in the absence of long-range planning, strategic planning. Where do you want the university to go? I think it shows up in any opportunity to rethink our vision, to rethink our mission in the 1990s and for the next century.
Okay, if you had your way, where would you want the university to go?
I would want the university to go into a direction where it serves the city of New York, which I think is its main constituency, and to think of it in the variety of its exposures, the variety, as I mentioned earlier, in community colleges, which do serve a very useful purpose in creating opportunities for students who want to learn skills, who want to enter the workforce. In our professional schools, such as the John Jay College for Criminal Justice, Baruch, and others, in which students with a very clear bent of their career opportunities can get a top quality education, and not least in our top flight liberal arts institutions, where we are, I think, in many ways as good as any other institution in the country, and where students can, in fact, prepare themselves for graduate school, for professional school, for life, for business, for anything I think they put their mind to. So that if we're looking for a direction, I think we're looking for a high quality, varied, system-oriented kind of future.
Now there are people who say that there was a time when the City University was a magnificent university, comparable to Harvard for the poor, or Yale or Columbia. And they think that it will not be possible to go back to those days. First of all, were we ever that good, in your opinion? And whether we were or weren't, could we live up to that image in the future?
The historian in me is inclined to say anything retrospective assumes a golden glow, which is not to say that I think we didn't have a great deal of quality. And the quality was, as we all know from anecdotes and from recollections, very much in the students, in what they accomplished. I think it was partly a function of having City College and the municipal colleges at their beck and call, free of charge. It was partly a function of a limit of other opportunities for them. And it was a happy coincidence of a faculty looking to reach out to students who are eager to learn. That's the golden age. Do we want to? Can we go back to that period? I don't think we left it in many ways. One of our problems, and you mentioned problems earlier, is that we are perceived as having only problems. I think
that's why I posed the question, right?
What I think that neglects is the fact that we have diverse strengths. We have strength in programs. We have nationally recognized. We have strength in faculty. We have now for 4 years in a row achieved national prominence in excellence in teaching. We have excellence in students going abroad on very desirable, much coveted scholarships. We have excellence in research, a major new facility at City College, which is going to put everybody else in the shade. These are strengths that we have not made a good, not had opportunity really to communicate well, because there are these strengths, and I think we should build on them. We should build on our good teaching. We should build on our good research. We should build on our good students.
Okay, but as you know, the criticism that we have been living through, you and I and those of us who are in the Board of Trustees, is the idea that first, too many students come to both the community colleges and the senior colleges unprepared for college work. And secondly, that it takes them too long a period of time to achieve a degree. What do you think could be done about that?
I think, first of all, the two issues are clearly related. Depending on the degree of preparation that they bring with them from the high schools, it takes longer in some cases than others. I think what should be done about it is that at some place in this university, there should be opportunities for them to prepare themselves for college. I'm not arguing that this is an endless process. It should not be an endless process. I would certainly argue that there should be opportunities, and there's a whole variety of strategies that you can think about that should be available to them who have a good chance of making it, who have the commitment to making it, and who will need the kind of attention that they have not had in high school in order to get over the hump.
Okay, how do we test? That's the issue, you know, the so-called freshman skills assessment test. How do we test those who have a good chance of making it? Are such tests available, and do we have them?
I suspect that there is no perfect test for this purpose. What we have been using has been used for different purposes, not always the right purposes, and we have essentially depended on it. Let me say, just by way of an aside, that at the senior colleges last fall, we had made significant steps up in students who passed all 3 assessment tests. That is a major change since 1996, when we allowed colleges to introduce higher admission standards, and we are attracting students who can in fact make those tests. Now, whatever we may think of the tests, I think that shows that students come to us better prepared compared with a few years back. Is there a way of telling the future of a student whether or not he can in fact live up to college work? The tests can only tell us whether he can do something well in his writing, his reading, and mathematics in his first year. They cannot tell us whether he can go beyond that. But they give us a reasonable assessment of whether a student can in fact get over that initial hump. If students fail badly all 3 tests, we know that they're very unlikely to get beyond that.
And those are the students, the ones who fail all 3 tests, are the ones who go primarily to the community colleges.
A large number of them do end up in community colleges, and with the new board policy that precludes students who have not passed all tests going to the senior colleges, clearly they will end up ultimately in the community colleges. But I think for me a question is, and that's for you also, Herman, what are the chances of students who fail badly 3 tests, who have not been well served in their high school years or in their school years? What are the chances for those students actually ever making it into college? I think that's a very serious question.
Well, as you know, we recently had the results of the tests that were given throughout the school system, and they're horrendous. There are 1/3 of the students, had we had the Regents test that Commissioner Mills talks about, would have failed altogether.
Yes.
In fact, everybody's worried that the way things are going, a lot of students are not going to be able to get even a high school diploma if the standards are put in place.
I think that's an extraordinarily worrisome prospect, because it affects those who would be eligible for college and those whom we want, in fact, to attract and give a chance.
On the other hand, the problem has been that up to now, with social promotion, we've had students coming in who clearly have not been given a proper high school diploma. And one of the functions has been for the City University to fill what has become an increasingly large gap.
I think that has been the function that we've assumed. I'm not sure that we set out to assume that function. On the other hand, I suppose we reached out to those we thought could make it, knowing that the alternative would be on the streets, a life without a future.
I agree, because after all, education is the key, especially today. We'll be back after these announcements.
Do you think you have the power to change the world?
I can shape the future, one child at a time.
I know I can make a difference in those children's lives, and I know I have.
Who knows where my influence may stop?
I teach.
I teach.
I teach.
Yes, they're teachers, but to the kids they reach, they're heroes.
I think I have the power to change the world. The influence is always there.
Do you have the power to wake up young minds? You want to make an impact on our future? Call 1-800-45-TEACH. Want to change the world?
I teach. I teach.
I teach.
I teach. I teach.
Be a teacher. Be a hero.
Our guest today is Dr. Christoph Kimmich, who is the Interim Chancellor of the City University. We started to talk about the value of teachers. And one of the arguments that I hear constantly when we go to public hearings is that the faculty of the City University now is not what it used to be because we have such a huge percentage of adjunct professors. What has been going on? What happened that this came about?
I mentioned earlier that we had a series of problems. Clearly, one of the problems that we've had is not having the kind of funding that a system like ours really requires. We have suffered over, I think, at least a decade regular cuts, and you know, Herman, since 1995-96, we've essentially had a flat budget, the same. In that period, however, we have lost significant numbers of full-time faculty who have gone into retirement without any significant decrease in students.
But is the reason that you cannot replace a faculty going into retirement with regular faculty, is that only a money problem, or is there a question of getting people who will be in tenure track positions?
It is largely a money problem. By and large, the City University still attracts some wonderfully well-prepared, well-trained young faculty. They want to be in New York. They want to come and teach our students. They want to be at the City University. That doesn't mean that we are always competitive in areas which are high in demand, in business, in computer science, in engineering, where both the demand across the country, the supply across the country, and the salaries are not something that we can match.
Just so everybody knows what we're talking about. Right now, what is the percentage of full-time regular faculty, and what is the percentage of part-time adjunct professors?
It varies obviously from college to college, but by and large we are estimating it is approximately 55 to 45 part-time, full-time.
Which is total of how many professors?
Total of, we have 550,000 full-time professors and about 8,300 part-time professors.
And what should the percentage be if we're going to run the university properly?
The ideal proportion, the ideal ratio would be 70 full-time, 30 part-time. I say that because part-timers serve a very useful purpose. They bring to the institution expertise that we do not have in staff. They can teach occasional courses that we couldn't teach with full-time faculty. They should not be used to fill in the gaps when full-time faculty have retired and cannot be replaced.
All right, so now let's talk about the budget problem, because I find that that is the biggest problem that we have, and most people don't understand why. Tell us how you see it.
The university's budget looks like an enormous number. It's $1.2 billion in the aggregate that is funded by the state, it's funded by the City of New York, and it is funded close to 50% by student tuition. About close to 90% of that is devoted to salaries. It is therefore committed to faculty, to support staff, to administrators who have permanent positions at the university and whose salaries, the cost of their support would not be available unless they retired or left the university. That gives the university a very small amount of flexible, fungible funds in which to do other things, in which to promote certain initiatives, and the need therefore is over and over again to see whether the state would increase the overall amount, would allow us to take programmatic initiatives, would allow us to take up some of the board priorities that we would like to take up, and to fund them adequately. So the difficulty is that we are stuck essentially into an unchanging flat budget supported by these three sources, city, state, and students.
But on the other hand, you don't want the state to increase the budget by saying that you should increase tuition, right?
Preferably not.
Because there are two ways of increasing the budget. One is increasing tuition, the other one is increasing the contribution from government.
The difficulty for us has been that when the university has had to increase tuition, there has been no commensurate increase in financial aid. And it does reach those students who have difficulty making ends meet and who would benefit enormously from the university.
Let's talk about financial aid. Suppose I'm watching this program and I'm 17 years old and I'm a young Herman Badillo or Christoph Kimmich, and I want to go to college, but I don't have the money. Now, I can't afford any of the private colleges, but I know that there's a better opportunity at the City University. If I don't have any money, how can I get in without paying?
You probably can't get in entirely without paying.
No, but I mean without any substantial tuition.
What we will say to you, you apply to a senior college, and we say the annual cost of that education is $3,200. You can, if you are qualified, apply for financial aid, which will cover up to 90% of your tuition if you combine state support and federal support.
Now, the financial aid that the state provides is totally separate from the budget. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the same thing with the federal government.
Yes.
So about approximately how many students now can get financial aid for next September, say?
Using last September's figures, we give out about 117,000 awards to students, and we're talking about 160,000 undergraduates.
So it's a very substantial
percentage. It's a very substantial amount, yes.
So then, for a large majority, they can get in almost tuition free if they take advantage of that aid.
The total amount of money that we give out last year was $129 million.
No, but I wanted
yes.
parents and students to know
Absolutely.
that even though there is tuition, which was forced upon us by Washington, because I was in Congress when we had the difficulty of getting help for New York City on condition that we institute tuition at the City University. But even then, there's a good possibility that if you cannot afford to pay tuition, you can get in, right?
Yes.
Now, the big problem is, why do not the state legislators and the chief executive officers understand the importance of City University as an institution that has to do with the future contribution by students to the city and the state of New York?
I think that's probably the question that has baffled us all. I would offer two suggestions. One is that I'm not sure that we have been able to make our case as persuasively as we have. I think that there are issues in which we do need to work. One issue I think in which we need to work is teacher education. And success in areas like that, I think, will make the legislatures and the chief executives more responsive.
That's one of the difficulties that I find also. When the feeling was that we were successful at really graduating students who would be able to perform, we did not have this kind of difficulty in getting money from the state or the city. I know because I was then very active as a commissioner and president of the Bronx. But the feeling now is that the standards have been lowered, and therefore the people in the state and city feel that you're not really getting your money's worth. What is your answer to that?
I think that I share with you the view that that perception exists and that there's a reaction to that perception. I don't think the perception is altogether warranted. And where it is warranted, where we do have problems, it is, after all, our plan, and that is what we've been working on this year in order to improve the substance behind that perception and to make clear to our principals, those who support us, as well as to prospective students and their parents, that what they're going to get is a high-quality education. That we are there now, I don't think anybody would argue. That we are doing something to get there, I think, is clear to us.
Okay, but as you say, the biggest crisis is teacher education, because we have a mandate from the Board of Regents that we have to bring up the individual colleges up to a level of 80% or so passing after they get a degree.
Correct.
And we have colleges like City College, where 60% of the students who get a degree in education cannot pass the teacher's exam. Therefore, they can't really teach as regular teachers. How is it possible that that happened? And can we meet the deadline that we have by December of this year, 1999?
Let me turn that around and start off by saying that all but 3 of our schools of education, the colleges that have schools of education, exceed the 80% rate. That's the good news. I think that we do have some colleges that need help, and they're fully aware of it. I think part of it has been, and I mentioned that earlier, a long-term neglect of teacher education, which has never been a priority, was not a priority of ours until about 2 or 3 years ago, when the state education department indicated its strong commitment to improving standards in teacher education and set some rather draconian prospects for closing down programs. I think we have made some progress in that. I think we need to make more progress in that in order to provide the kinds of teachers that we have to put into schools to train the students to rise to the levels that we want them to have when they enter college. That's really the reciprocal relationship. And people talk about a K through 16 connection, and what that means is that we train the teachers to prepare those students to rise to the expectations that we have for them. That's our obligation.
Yeah, because the problem is that the teachers can't pass the teacher's exam. They still go into the educational system as provisionals. And then they kind of act like teachers, but then they're out in limbo. In the meantime, of course, if they can't really pass the teacher's exam, they can't do the kind of job to ensure that the students will be able to graduate with the kind of degree that is required for them to perform at the college level. So it's going around in circles.
But I think that part of the responsibility here of the school system has to be not to hire teachers who are not qualified. And that may sound harsh, but I think it's the message that we need to send.
Yeah, but the problem is there's a shortage of teachers, as you know, because so many of the teachers who come into the system move out because of higher salaries and because so many retire.
And clearly that is an issue of salaries and retirements that we need to address, but there's not a national shortage of teachers. We could attract them if we offered them the conditions under which they wanted to teach.
Now, in the time that we have, can you tell me what is your priority of what you would like to do in the time that you have as Interim Chancellor?
In the time remaining, I would like to put into place a long-range plan for the university and to take the first steps that we've already discussed with the presidents in developing a more clearly focused separation of missions among the institutions, to bring each of them to a qualitatively high level defined by them, working within the system, so as to promote, I think, that image that you and I would like to see of the university.
When you say different missions, would you set up different levels for different colleges?
Different levels tend to be invidious, but I think there are a number of similarities among our institutions that would create certain clusters in which the liberal arts institutions, the professional institutions, the community colleges could see themselves categorized, as it were, into areas that clearly represent what they stand for and how they want to be perceived.
The problem with long-range planning, however, is that unfortunately in Albany at City Hall, budgets are only adopted on a year-to-year basis.
I think that is one of the major problems, but I do not think that the years of neglect can be turned around overnight. So my intention is to start with a long-range vision so that we can start year by year to build towards that. Unless we project to the mayor's office and to the governor's office a sense of where we want to be in 2 or 3 years, I don't think we can engage the sympathy of these two offices, of the legislatures, or the taxpayers in general.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kimmich. You can reach us by email at our website, www.cunytv.cuny.edu, to let us know what you think, or write to us at CUNY TV, 25 West 43rd Street, Suite 1220, New York, New York, 10036.